Hey guys, welcome back. I just watched episode 3 of the Halo TV show and I'm gonna be honest, I was quite pleasantly surprised. I actually found myself not only really enjoying most of the episode, but also for the first time feeling kind of intrigued as to where the story might go. Before we jump into the episode though, I just want to let you guys know that I'm not going to be making an episode 3 explain video. I'm just going to put any Easter eggs that I noticed into this video to keep it all nice and concise, because I found with those explainer videos, I was just retelling the exact plot of the episodes, which was kind of boring to make, so I figured I'd just throw any Easter eggs that I noticed into this video, and trust me, as you can see by the title, there are some very exciting Easter eggs in this episode that make me pretty excited for future episodes, I'm gonna be honest, so let's dive into the episode. So the episode opened on the planet Oban, which in the Silver timeline is basically a human trash colony, but in the regular universe, it's very, very different. It was a colony that the UNSC used to rehouse a bunch of human refugees after the war, and also was where the Halo 5 version of the Promethean Knights were first spotted, but it seems to be very, very different in the show. Something I liked about this section of the episode was that these guards here looked really Marathon-esque. The kind of helmet and the armor really reminded me of Marathon armor, which is obviously a cool callback to old Bungie lore, which I always love seeing. Whether it was or not, probably wasn't, but just what I thought. You know what, when we first saw this scene in one of the trailers with the elites holding this kind of like Origins lightning staff kind of thing, I was adamant that was going to be this show's version of a luminary, which, if you don't know, is a foreigner artifact that the Covenant used to scan for other foreigner artifacts. Now, one of the most iconic uses of a luminary in the regular canon was on Harvest, when the Covenant scanned the planet and found a load of artifacts that they translated as meaning reclamation, but in fact, they meant reclaimer, and all the artifacts weren't artifacts at all. They were humans, which is why the Covenant made humanity their #1 enemy, because it basically invalidated the entire religion. Now, it looks as though that plot point from the main canon has kind of been used in the show, but twisted and contorted and used in a different manner. These elites are looking for an artifact on Oban with the Luminary, but it turns out that Marquis, the young Marquis, is in fact that artifact. However, I have a feeling that a human being the artifact that we're looking for won't quite have the same implications in the Silver timeline as it did in the regular canon, because it's not a species-wide thing. Being a reclaimer doesn't seem to be a species-wide thing for humanity in the Silver timeline. It's just the Blessed Ones, like Marquis and like Chief, so it doesn't completely undo the entire Covenant religion. At least there's not as much as it did in the regular canon. For all intents and purposes, in the TV show, Blessed Ones are essentially like flesh-based foreigner artifacts. Moving on again, Parangoski essentially weaponizing Miranda against her mother, and her and Halsey's kind of little feud they've got going on is, again, very on brand for Parangoski, exactly the kind of thing that would go on in the regular canon between the two. And speaking of, this episode we got to see a lot more of the Flash clone of Dr. Halsey, and it really dived into a lot of the kind of ethics of Flash cloning, which personally I really liked. I think the way that they treated the ethics of Flash cloning in this show was pretty much on point. The scene where they ultimately extracted her brain sample was quite honestly horrifying, which is exactly what it should have been. At the end of the day, Flash cloning created another sentient human who was a living, sentient being for the sole purpose of extracting their organs, which is a crime against humanity and then some. I think that puts it quite lightly. So seeing the way they handled this in the show, I think was really good. That said though, that scene where Halsey's lab assistant tried to kiss the paralyzed Flash clone was really, really weird. Really weird. That scene was weird. This dude is very, very fucked up. And again, the scene where Chief gets his neural lace fitted was pretty horrifying, to be honest with you, but that's the reality of it. That's how it went down in the regular canon, so it's cool seeing the actual horror of these things being depicted in an accurate fashion. And I gotta say, when Cortana appears, and she's voiced by Jen Taylor, hearing Jen Taylor's voice in the show was so good. It was instantly the most Halo-feeling thing of this entire show so far. The show's stubborn refusal to use any sound effects that are actually from a Halo game besides the odd little reference like the camo and the door made hearing Jen Taylor in the show feel like the audio equivalent of finding an oasis in the middle of a desert. It felt so good and very grounding for the show. That said though, I'm gonna be honest, Cortana doesn't look good. I don't know what the deal is with how they've done her with like either VFX or whether it's mocap. I don't know what they've done with it, but it's very weird. The way that she looks and moves is like a combination of the bad parts of live action adaptations of video game things and also some peculiar VFX as well. Is strange. It gave me real Uncanny Valley, but not for the reason that smart AIs should elicit Uncanny Valley. Very weird. I did like this scene with the UNSC patrol ship Gladius. The interior of the Covenant Corvette that Marquis on actually kind of slightly resembles a Covenant ship, which cannot be said about the inside of High Charity whatsoever, so seeing some actual purple in a Covenant environment was very refreshing. It was also cool to see a Bumblebee in live action, and the Marines as well looked fantastic. I love the design of these Marines, the armor, the caps some of them got on, the helmets, the guns, everything was just, they looked fantastic. And I'm gonna be honest, the scene where Marquis and the Let Golo invade the UNSC Gladius was also pretty damn good. I'm gonna be honest, it had a kind of horror and unsettling vibe to it. There was even like a little bit of body horror vibes at times, and this scene where the Let Golo opens its mouth in front of Captain Yates, I'm assuming his name was quite creepy. We also got a very small sneak peek at the Hunters as well. We just saw the Hunter knees. So all we've seen so far, the knees of a Hunter. Hopefully we see the full Hunter form soon, because I want to see these bad boys in action. Luckily, we managed to see that Yates did manage to enact the Cole Protocol on the UNSC Gladius, so Marquis wouldn't have been able to get any information from the ship because Yates was clearly a good and responsible captain. I did like it though, how, remember that scene in Terminator 2 when the T-1000 stabs that guy through the eye with his finger when it like extends and the liquid metal comes out of it? I liked how they basically gave Marquis the same thing. She has like a little like Covenant energy like knife maybe on her finger that goes through Yates' eye and kills him. Maybe it's because I'm a Terminator 2 fanboy. I don't know, but part of me wants to think that that little scene there was a very subtle reference to Terminator 2. Then we get to another weird scene. Chief absolutely butt naked in a bathroom with Cortana stood right behind him in like full human size, very freakishly tall, mind you, bearing in mind how tall Chief is. She's not that much smaller than him, at least in this size, which is weird to see. She stood behind him while he's completely butt naked. This video's not getting monetized, is it? And helps him remove the like emotional suppressant pellet in his back, which I thought was a weird scene, to be honest with you. I'm gonna be honest, right? My main complaint with the show at the moment is that Chief just isn't written or characterized like Master Chief in the games, or even really the expanded universe at all. It really feels like they wrote this story arc for a completely different character, but then were like, oh no, we need Master Chief in the TV show to sell it. So they just put Chief in the show and copy-pasted that story arc onto the Master Chief and didn't alter it at all. I'm starting to get a little bit tired of every single Halo story post-2012 trying to humanize Chief. I liked it in Halo 4, partly because of the novelty of it and also partly because it was handled so well, and I also like the aspects of it that we got in Halo Infinite, but I don't know, it's like every time Chief shows up in any story, it's like immediately like, right, we've got to humanize the Chief, we've got to make him into an emotional character, and I just wish they'd kind of lay off that for a little bit and instead just focus entirely on going back to Chief being a complete badass one-liner, one-man killing machine Spartan. You can have both of them at the same time, and you can have stories that focus on both. It just feels like nowadays, all we really get is the whole humanizing Chief thing. We don't really get much of the one-liner badass killing machine Chief. Hopefully, the next episodes will go more into that, but we'll have to wait and see. They also seem to be going like really in on this Blessed One thing for Chief in the Silver Timeline, and it's very clear that with Marquis saying she's gonna bring the prophets to Demon's Head, that they're setting up a very clear conflict and dynamic between Chief and Marquis. Not quite sure how I feel about this just yet. We've not seen enough of it yet to make a proper judgment. I just feel like that dynamic should be filled between Chief and an elite, but you never know, it might end up working really well. Now, time for my favorite thing in this entire episode. So, when Cortana was showing Chief Eridanus 2, which is the planet that he grew up on, she mentioned something very, very interesting. When Chief asks her what happened to Eridanus 2 and the people that lived on it, Cortana says that a plague came to the planet with no cure on an unauthorized transport ship and basically wiped out most of the population. and subsequently, the UNSC enacted Emergency Contact Protocol Upsilon and sealed off the planet to contain the virus. Now, Emergency Contact Protocol Upsilon. Does that sound familiar? Well, it might just sound familiar. The reason for that is because Emergency Contact Protocol Upsilon is the measure that the UNSC and the UEG put into place to quarantine and lock down a flood outbreak. So, does that mean that Eridanus 2 was actually invaded and infected by the flood, and that fact was hidden by the UNSC and the UEG from the rest of humanity? I don't know, but quite possibly. I also think it's very interesting how this plague came to Eridanus 2. They said that it came there on an unauthorized transport ship, which is very similar to how the corrupted dust of the precursors arrived in Sansha'yun populations way back at the dawn of the Foreigner Flood War. Bear in mind, this corrupted dust is literally what created the flood in the first place. There's a clear parallel being drawn there. Now, of course, this could just mean nothing. All of this could just be like one big Easter egg for lore fans like me who know loads of obscure details about Halo's lore to go, hey, I recognize that, but not have it result in anything. But I feel like there's too much there for it to mean nothing. Of course, the flood invading Eridanus 2 would be very out of the regular canon. Like, it goes without saying, but that didn't happen in the regular canon. There's also then the question of how did the flood break containment? Where did they break containment? How did they get their hands on interstellar travel, etc, etc. Many questions. Of course, this could, like I said, always just be one small, meaningless little Easter egg to get people like me who know way too much about obscure lore details excited, but I don't know, I feel like there's just too much there for it to mean nothing. There's also the fact, not to go too crazy on you right now, but there's also the fact that in this shot of some of the promotional material of Eridanus 2, these trees, I think they're trees, these very badly photoshopped trees, do look an awful lot like flood forms. Maybe that's just confirmation bias on my part, maybe I'm just trying to see something that definitely isn't there, but I don't know. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. I will say that this entire section got me quite a bit more excited for the future of this show than most of the details so far. So to round up the episode, we have Chief and Halsey and Cortana going to Eridanus 2, which could be very interesting given what we just discussed. We have Soren taking Quan to Madrigal, which is going to be interesting because I'm going to be honest, I really don't feel invested in Quan's story arc at all right now. The Madrigal stuff, yes, but I don't know, Quan's not really done anything to get me interested in a character yet, so hopefully Soren, a character that I do like, will be able to kind of get me invested in her story arc. And then of course we also have the whole Cortana being used to essentially control Chief and ensure, at least in part, that he doesn't leak any of his memories that kind of reveal the truth of the Spartan 2 program, that 6-year-olds were kidnapped and forced into military conscription and had bio-augmentations done like that. All that stuff, it looks as though Cortana's partly going to be used to prevent Chief from revealing any of that information. So, to round this episode out, ultimately, this is the first time with this show so far that I've actually felt invested in the story and intrigued in where it's going to go. I really, really don't like how often Chief not only has his helmet off, but also is completely out of his armor, and also I don't like how they've characterized him in this show at all. It just doesn't feel like Chief, but honestly, besides that, this episode was the most Halo this show has felt so far, honestly. Jen Taylor was fantastic. The potential flood plot point, of course, has me very intrigued. And overall, this episode, I think, set a very good precedent for the show going forward. Far better than Episode 2. Episode 2 was pretty boring, and although I will say not much happened in this episode, it felt like far better filler that advanced the plot more and had far better pacing than Episode 2 did. This was a better Episode 2 than Episode 2. So hopefully, Episode 4 and onwards is going to be pretty good, because this episode definitely set the plot up in a much better way than the last 2 episodes have done. So consider me intrigued. And with that said, I'm going to round this video out here. Don't forget to leave your thoughts down below in the comments, what you thought about any of the details of this episode, whether you liked it, whether you didn't like it. Of course, what you thought about the flood stuff, let me hear it down below in the comments, and let's round this bad boy out here. I want to give a massive thank you to my amazing patrons for the continued support over there, as per usual, and thank you all so much for watching, I really do appreciate it, and I'll catch you all in the next one.